Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of the Mindbreeze Podcast, illuminating information, where we discuss how businesses can embrace corporate knowledge. Today we have on Josh Cole, a senior sales engineer at Mindbreeze in Vienna, Austria. Josh has over 7 years' experience working as a technical consultant. Josh has been involved in countless projects spanning a multitude of different industries and sectors. Today we will discuss how information and insights are often hidden in plain sight within company data and documents, and how insight engines can get the most out of them. So Josh, we're excited to have you, and with that, let's get right into it with the first question. So I want to start by asking you, based on the introduction above, why is it so important to discuss this topic?
Yeah, hi, Jeremy. Thanks a lot for having me on the podcast. So I think it's really important to discuss this topic because, as many of us know, data within companies only normally ever increases. When companies gather data, they rarely delete it at a later date. And more often than not, this data is accumulated either in different unstructured data lakes or structured in many different ways over different departments, depending on the use cases of the data. And therefore, based on this large accumulation of data and different data, it's really, really useful to have a good overview, not just of the data itself, but also the what, the where, the why, the who, and the how of the data. Understanding the data doesn't just help you find what you're looking for with the data, but it also gives you a huge value-added effect when searching over the data that you have. Okay,
so you talk about, getting information from, documents and different data sources. So what sort of information can, typically be found within documents? So in other words, what exactly do you mean by information?
Yeah, that's actually, that is a great question. So in my field, working as a technical consultant in Mindbreeze, we treat everything that we can extract from data or from documents as metadata. So that will be, for example, the content and the title, but also like the creation date, the author, and things like this. So typically, when you have a normal user, what they may think of as the information saved within a document or a piece of data, for example, may only extend to the file name, the file extension, the creation date, and the content, for example, because that's really what they can see for example, in their file manager. They can really see that information, and therefore that's all the information that exists about this file. But actually, in reality, in the background, this file has got tons more information about it, either directly there on the file or information that we're able to infer and extract from it. So, for example, let's continue with our file example of a file in a file system. You wouldn't just have the file name, but you'd have the full file path, and actually that can be a lot of information in the file path depending on the department the file's been saved in and the protocols and processes the department or the company follows, as well as there being tons of different properties that the file may have, which contains a lot of information. So, for example, a lot of PDF documents, if in your PDF viewer you open the context menu and take a look at properties, there can be a lot of additional metadata attached to this. And all of this metadata attached to these documents can really help people, so end users and companies, understand this data, understand their data in a lot more detail. And the main point is not just understanding that all of this metadata really exists in the background attached to all of this data, but also what can be done with it.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I was going to go when you said what can be done with it. This is an important question, I think, because it is about the what. So what can you do with this information? Can you expand on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So within the context of insight engines and insight services, there's a lot that we can do with the information. So it's not just there for the end users to read. We're actually able to work with this metadata and use it for a variety of purposes. So For example, we can actually use this metadata potentially to build semantic relationships between entities, for example, between a project, a person, and then multiple documents. So, for example, going back to our file and our file system example that I was discussing previously, a file path can actually contain a lot of usable information, which can be used, of course, for navigation, but can also be used for classifying and really understanding the data. So a lot of companies and departments often use or can use standardized file system paths, which very, very highly categorize these different documents. So first of all, we can take those file paths and we could very easily make them into a search filter for the front-end search, for example. But on top of this extremely well categorized file path, which gives us a very clear understanding of the category of the files, could be used as training information to train custom prediction models for these files. So we know, for example, that all of these 10,000 files within one main folder labeled, let's say, CVs, and then we have another containing folder which is labeled insurance claims, which contains another 10,000 files. Based on that information, we can very easily create a prediction model to categorize incoming files based on those categories. So often, for a very low effort, high reward payoff, the information that we can gather from this metadata can be used for a variety of data enrichment tasks. And so in the context of Mindbreeze, that would be via our semantic pipeline, as we call it. And this can also be, for example, via taxonomy or glossary enrichment. So a lot of companies may also have their own custom taxonomies or glossaries or dictionaries, which they use in their day-to-day life throughout the company. And we can actually take those taxonomies and extract all of those words and those words of interest to the company directly from the content of that file. And yeah, as well as this, what we can do is we can take previously unlinked data. So as I mentioned right at the start, companies often have many, many different data pools. Often they're very diverse and disconnected. We can take this previously unlinked data and via this metadata and the semantic pipeline where we've extracted information, we can then connect this data together via references and also visually group them together in an Insight app.
Okay, so that is a lot of intriguing information here. So that kind of leads me to our last question, where I kind of want to wrap stuff up. And I'm sure business leaders are curious about this and the workforce in general. So what benefit will this have on the company? And can you share about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the main message here really is value added insights and revealing information and insights for data, which actually either was already there within the data, or we've been able to leverage the data in such a way that we can extract meaningful insights from that data. And then ultimately, once we've been able to extract these insights and get all of this value-added information, we can create a much better overview and generally understand the data in a lot of a more well-rounded and a clearer way. And then this will give companies, quite simply, a much, much better understanding of their data and be able to use it in a much more effective and efficient way.
Awesome, Josh. So, this has obviously been super insightful for this episode, and I really want to just thank you for your time and the technical expertise that you offered us here. So, thank you again, and I'm sure our listeners will, gain a lot from this.
Yep, I just want to say thanks again for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Of course, thank you.